the Russian-Iranian invasion that comes in Ezekiel 38 and 39, a majority of them are going to be Muslims. So by the time those two wars come down, Islam is going to be paling in comparison. In Zephaniah 2, verses 10 and 11, it talks about the gods of the earth being famished by the God of the Jews. And I believe that's saying that in contextually when you're talking about responses of the Psalm 83 war in Zephaniah 2. I believe also that in the very beginning, and after Psalm 83, Ezekiel 38, and the first few years of the tribulation period, which is a 7-year period of time, which commences with the confirmation of this false covenant with Israel, that the Antichrist that Islam will pretty much be done. So I believe that all this hype about the Assyrian Antichrist being Islamic, the Islamic Mahdi, who they say is the biblical Antichrist, I don't, unfortunately, for those who believe that's true, I don't buy it. I don't see it as being biblical.
Well, you and Waleed Shobat, I mean, you had some go back and forth on this not too long ago. Probably neither one of you convinced the other. Some of our mutual friends also, like Philip Goodman, people like that. There are some of them that believe in this Assyrian Antichrist, others that don't. Where does Bill Salus believe that the Antichrist comes from?
Okay, and first of all, let me say this. Not everyone who believes in the Assyrian Antichrist believes that he's is a Muslim. So, I mean, there's that little camp, too. So,
well, maybe even add a caveat about the Mahdi and the Assyrian Antichrist, but where do you believe that he comes from?
I believe he comes, we're told where he comes out of Daniel 9:26. He comes out of the people who destroy the city and the sanctuary, and that was the Roman Empire. And at the time the Roman Empire reigned, they were reigning out of Rome, and that was in the Western model of Europe. Now, they did a split, and they had an Eastern and a Western Roman Empire split, and so on and so forth, but I don't see it as being that way, and nor is it commonly taught. I believe that the Antichrist comes out of the Western aspect of the European area, perhaps the European Union or something like that. But I just do not see him as being a Muslim. I think Islam is going to start to falter dramatically in the aftermath of these wars. I don't see him as being Islamic. I'm not even sure there's going to be a Mahdi who comes. It doesn't matter what Islam says. I mean, Islam's not prophetic. God says in Isaiah 46 that he alone knows the beginning from the end, and he dares other religions to even declare what he can declare. And he does that to authenticate his own sovereignty. So whatever Muhammad came up with and Islam's coming up with and Ahmadinejad believes, that's not biblical. I mean, who knows if there's even going to be a Mahdi? But I do not believe that the Antichrist is Islamic. I believe he's going to come out of the Roman Empire, just like Daniel 9:26 and 27 talk about. And I believe he's probably in the womb of some woman today, if he's not already born, because I believe the evidences of the days in which we live are clearly pointing that this is the final century. You cover all these different things. The book that I've co-authored, and you've written in there as well. We cover all these different angles of what to watch for in this century, which I actually believe is the final century. And the evidences I point out in my chapter, I talked about some of the biblical ones with the wars coming. We also have that when the Antichrist comes on the scene in Revelation 13, verses 16, he says that the false prophet and they implement this cashless society where no one, rich man, poor, free, man, woman, child, will be able to buy or sell unless they take a mark in their right hand or their forehead. Now, many of us believe that's a technology that the Apostle John was trying to explain 2,000 years ago without having computer chips and computer technologies in his vernacular and in his technologies of that time. We believe he was trying to describe a technology that exists today. That's in the Revelation 13. That's toward the latter part of the book of Revelation, and most people believe that system will be in place in the middle of the tribulation. If that system exists today, that's just one more evidence. There's another evidence that I point out in the chapter in Revelation 11. There'll be these two witnesses that are preaching the gospel in Jerusalem, and the Antichrist, he kills them, and they lie dead in the streets for 3.5 days. The whole world, it says, will see them. Well, a century ago, people used to use that prophecy and say, see, the Bible can't be true. There's no way the whole world can see two dead guys in the streets of Jerusalem. Well, today they can. They'll be on every channel. They'll be on Fox. They may not be on MSNBC because they don't like to cover some of that stuff, but they do. They'll be on TV channels. The whole world will be able to see them. So my concern is that we have been thrust into the final century. There are probably, if you took your normal Pew Bible, 1,000 pages in that Bible, you've got about 100 of those pages of end times Bible prophecy that has not found final fulfillment. And I believe that roughly that 100 pages including things like we're talking about here, and the emergence of the Antichrist, and the trumpet, and the seal, and the trumpet, and the bowl judgments of Revelation, where billions of humanity are destroyed, and so on and so forth. I believe that those types of things are going to find their final fulfillment in, if not our generation, our children's generation, or our grandchildren's generation, Tom, because the evidences are here.
We had advertised this show as also including some kind of a unique connection to UFOs. Now this seems like, to me, that it's pretty hard, or it might seem to most people, it's pretty hard to kind of make the gap between what we've been talking about so far and ufology, and yet, as I follow your program and some of these other programs, Lynn Marzulli, some of these other people, they're making a direct connection between UFOs, UFO activity, UFO sightings, and what we're talking right now about the coming of the Antichrist. How do you make this connection between these two? Help us with that.
Well, and again, this is a little less my area of expertise, because you're taking me out of the Middle East now. You're putting me in the whole world here now with this. But and I always often refer people to yourself and to Marzulli.
Well, and yet there's a great deal of this activity now that's almost unprecedented that's also being cited inside the Holy Land.
Absolutely, and I believe that, and I think I always tie this into 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 8 through 12. And you and I had this conversation a while back when you interviewed me on the Roswell radio program, and we talked about this. The Antichrist is going to come in, and he's going to rise to power on all signs and lying wonders. It talks about that, that the humanity, because they did not believe the truth, God turns them over to strong delusion to believe in what's called the lie in those verses. Now, when you break that Hebrew word down, that word study down, you're dealing with three primary words called pempo, plani, and energeia. And basically, pempo can mean to dispatch in an orderly motion. Plani is a deceitful wandering, and energeia is an operative power. And to me, Tom, it sounds like this could have UFO written all over it. See, what I think is very important is that this ufology is more than now just a mystery or a fascination. It's becoming undeniable. And we know from the Bible there are extraterrestrial beings. They call them angels. There's different ranks of angels. There's demons and so on and so forth. And I believe that what the humanity is going to be overtaken by, there's a whole other thing like I mentioned on Jim Tetlow's book with the Mary apparitions and what is really the harlot system of Revelation 17, and unfortunately we don't have time to talk about that. But I believe ultimately in the end that these signs and lying wonders could very much have to do with the reality of these angelic beings and this whole campaign manifesting itself, overwhelming humanity. The old garden lie that says you can be like God, when Satan told that to Adam and Eve. I've heard of some people speculating that really what the Antichrist might actually be doing with his angelic cohorts through this UFO campaign, actually showing them through New Age and meditative techniques how they can actually not only be like God, they can be God, and have this razzle-dazzle going on with these UFO guys, these angelic beings behind the scenes, making it look like these people are becoming like God. Now that's a new theory you may not even have heard yet, but that's one I've recently covered upon too. But I believe this plays in, and I believe this plays in the very end event, and I believe that the Antichrist rises in on that theme, and I think it's a very real phenomenon. People ought to be paying attention to it.
So this is like a part of great deception.
I believe so.
And so how's that going to play out? A bunch of UFOs appear in the sky. What happens? We're all terrified. We all feel like there's suddenly some apparition of power that's beyond our understanding, and some authorities, the President of the United States, the Pope, they all walk out into the well of the United Nations and they say, guess what, folks? We've just been invaded by powers from other sources. Is that what you're talking about? And so and these sources have only selected one ambassador on Earth, and here's their man, and he's the Antichrist, or is it something entirely different? In your mind, how there are these apparitions? It's undeniable. I mean, it is happening around the world. Then you begin to interpret, okay, but what is it, and what does it mean? And if it's going to be some part of great deception, in the mind of Bill Salus, how does that play into, how does that scenario unfold in the introducing of the Antichrist?
Well, it's an area that I honestly have not thought through as deeply as you have, but I would tell you this. I don't see it as a Star Wars type scenario. I do like the concept of them suggesting that there is only one